Hammond was in his car on a first date at a Hardee's restaurant when he was fatally shot by police last month. Police say the woman Hammond was with was there to sell marijuana. The buyer turned out to be an undercover officer. The local police chief says Hammond drove his car toward an ununiformed officer who was also on the scene and who police say fired his gun in self-defense. The county coroner, in a statement to our local affiliate, says Hammond was struck twice with wounds to the chest and collarbone. Attorneys representing the victim's family say the county coroner's statement suggests the shots were fired from the front of Hammond's vehicle. The family says their own independent autopsy concludes that the shots were fired from the side, proving they say that the officer was never in any danger because the car was not aimed at the officer. The county prosecutor has pushed back at the significance of the independent autopsy, telling the local NBC affiliate it is consistent with the coroner's assessment that Hammond was shot twice in the upper torso. NBC News has reached out to the police for comment. They have just released a batch of documents, including a police report that does not mention a shooting. Now, the police also say there will be another document batch to be released next week, including the name of the officer involved. South Carolina law enforcement is investigating this incident, and I'm joined now by Paul and Angie Hammond, parents of Zachary, and their attorney, Eric Bland. Mr. and Mrs. Hammond, first, I'm very sorry about the loss of your son, but do you believe investigators have been open with you about the details of Zach's death, and what prompted you to start questioning their version of events?
I don't believe they've been open with us. Matter of fact, they really have told us nothing yet. We have absolutely nothing from anybody. They have told us anything. We've tried to ask and we get nothing. And the reason we had to seek an attorney is because of that. We're left in the dark.
And you've been quoted in reports, Mr. Bland, as saying the coroner's statement was deceptive. Why do you say that?
It was absolutely deceptive. For a week, the coroner and the police chief were recorded as saying that Zachary was shot in the chest and shoulder without giving any proper context to the location of where the bullets actually entered his body. And when we saw Zachary's body in the coroner photographs last Wednesday, we realized that we needed a second autopsy to be done. And we released those photos yesterday, and they clearly show that the first shot was in Zachary's left rear shoulder, located behind his left shoulder, and the second shot was through his left side back chest. So to put that in proper context, the officer who shot Zachary, and actually he was in uniform, we're not told his identity, we're not told whether he had a body cam, but he was located behind Zachary. So it's physically impossible for that automobile to have posed any kind of threat to that officer at the time when Zachary was shot, and he was shot from the rear. And as a lawyer, I'm troubled by the fact that the press, the government, everyone has been slow of foot to come and look at this, because we believe that an unarmed teen, whether he's white or black, should always be the focus. It shouldn't be the color of his skin. We should be focusing on the police misconduct, whether excessive force was necessary, and whether it was reasonable under the circumstances. And we believe that if Zachary was black, that there would be a lot more attention to this matter.
So again, and I just want to correct myself, because it was the local police chief saying that Zach drove his car toward a uniformed officer who was also on the scene. They say they fired in self-defense on this. Mrs. Hammond, let me ask you, the police chief hasn't released the name of the officer involved yet, withholding this information until at least next week. How does that make you feel about how slowly information has been coming out?
It's hard for us to grasp. We don't understand what went on. We have no clue as to what happened. All we know is that Zach was shot from the back. And, he was our son, and we don't feel like that his life mattered to them.
Thomas, there were many more reasonable steps that this officer could have taken before leaving his vehicle and drawing his gun and going to Zach and firing off his shots. There was not an APB. There wasn't a warrant for anyone's arrest. There wasn't anybody's life in danger. There was no weapon in the car. There wasn't a large amount of drugs, if any. They didn't wait for any transaction to take place. So even if Zachary was trying to leave, which we dispute, there was no reason that deadly force should be used. There's stringent laws about when law enforcement can discharge their weapons in moving vehicles, and none of those was present, because if you shoot a driver and incapacitate that driver while the automobile is going forward, then the automobile becomes essentially an uncontrolled missile. None of those factors were present.
Mr. Bland, let me ask you, because you have expressed interest in wanting the Attorney General to get involved. Have you expressed that specifically to Loretta Lynch's office, and have you gotten a response, Mr. Bland?
No, we're talking about the South Carolina Attorney General, Alan Wilson, to get involved because of the local prosecutors under intense pressure in whether to bring charges or not. We think to bring this to Columbia, where our Attorney General is, and appoint a disinterested prosecutor, this matter would move along more smoothly.
I see.
And the fact of the matter is this family has not received one single phone call from law enforcement, the governor, or anyone who's an elected official expressing any condolence or offering any assistance. And on the other shootings that have taken place in our state recently, unfortunately, the Walter Scott shooting in North Charleston, as well as the Emanuel 9, there was an outpouring of support for the families. These people here are the victims. And for the police chief of Seneca to call his officer who shot and killed an unarmed 19-year-old kid who weighs 121 pounds a victim of a premeditated murder is absolutely repugnant.
We thank you, all three of you, for your time. Paul and Angie Hammond, we're very sorry for your loss. Eric Bland, the attorney for the Hammond family, thank you for joining us today. We'll be right back after this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Get a good look at the redesigned Nissan Maxima.
And during Nissan's Bottom Line Model Year-End event, get up to $1,000